The Bellator cage is coming to CBS Saturday night in its network debut, and it's a card that's packing heat. In the main event, heavyweight champion Ryan Bader will defend his belt against arguably the greatest heavyweight to ever live, Fedor Emelianenko. These two met just over 4 years ago to settle the heavyweight Grand Prix, and it was over in the blink of an eye.
And watch for that right. Oh, it's going to be over. Big shot, and it's all over. Ryan Bader.
Although it was a difficult pill for the last emperor to swallow, Fedor, as he's shown in years past, bounced back emphatically.
Left hand look. Oh, two monster shots by Fedor.
This fight will mark the swan song in Fedor's illustrious career. For a fighter that has accomplished just about everything in this sport, it would be fitting to go out as a Bellator champion, a feat that come Saturday night will be much easier said than done. In the co-main event, undefeated middleweight champion Johnny Eblen will make his first title defense against Anatoly Tokov. Eblen told everyone that he is the future of the 185-pound division and proved it against Gegard Mousasi, one of the most decorated fighters MMA has ever seen.
And now the new.
While Eblen made it look easy against a polished vet, Tokov offers a different kind of challenge. A disciple of Fedor's fight team, he offers a suffocating style of attack, which nobody in the Bellator organization has been able to handle thus far.
Anatoly Tokov dispatches Muhammad Abdullah.
History will be made Saturday night in the City of Angels. Who will leave the Bellator cage as champions? We are in for a can't-miss fight card on CBS.
Bellator 290, it's a final walk in the cage for Fedor for the heavyweight title, plus the middleweight world championship. That's on February 4th at 9 Eastern, and of course you can watch that on CBS, also streaming on Paramount+. Here's Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell with more.
Bellator 290, Saturday night, prime time on CBS, a 3-fight main card at 9 p.m. Eastern. Luke Thomas, right off the top, a heavyweight title rematch between defending King Ryan Bader and the last emperor, Fedor Emelianenko. First, from a historical standpoint, I don't think a final fight of a legendary fighter's career has ever felt this big.
This is certainly unusual. Getting a farewell tour like this, usually in MMA, the very best fighters end up crawling out of the cage on their hands and knees. We've seen it a lot this year. Shogun Rua, Frankie Edgar, and certainly many others. It's hard to really get an exit done the right way. And of course, he may lose, but to the point that you're making, there is some ceremony around this. There's some stakes around this. In the final fight of Fedor Emelianenko's illustrious career, he is battling for a weight class title. And so for that, given some of those stakes and given the way in which the week has gone, and of course, how all of this has been kind of foreshadowed and prearranged, this is unusual. This is a big deal for the arguably the best heavyweight fighter, some might say the best fighter in MMA history, to go out in his final fight, Brian Campbell, fighting for a weight class title. That is very unusual circumstances.
No question about it. Fedor Emelianenko, 46 years old, a 23-year career will come to an end Saturday night. Win, lose, or draw, the legend said. But Ryan Bader at 39, looking for the third defense of his Bellator heavyweight title, the same title he won by defeating the legend Fedor in 2019 in the finals of the Bellator World Heavyweight Grand Prix tournament. So, Luke, when we look back 3+ years ago, it was a 35-second first-round knockout for Bader. But when you talk about what the legendary Fedor still has at age 46, and you look at the betting odds, there is a healthy puncher's chance and a lot of respect thrown at the Russian legend. How live of an underdog in your eyes is he entering Saturday?
He is a real live dog. And here's why I make that case. From the odds perspective, maybe you don't feel that way. Again, it depends on someone's preferences and how much they like to bet on what kinds of situations. But the reason why I think this is a good chance for Fedor to score an upset, and of course, as you indicated, he is the underdog, but this is why, right? Bader is in a stretch of his career where he's a little long in the tooth. Now, he is the weight class champion, but the last 2 wins he's gotten were really grind out wrestling affairs. He wasn't able to score the finish on what you thought would have been overmatched opposition. That kind of caught my attention. And more to the point, Fedor is experiencing something of a late career renaissance, or so we think. No, he doesn't have the characteristic speed that he had in his pride days, but even then, he still is pretty quick for a heavyweight. In fact, I think he probably is faster, certainly in terms of hand speed and the ability to connect with punches, than Ryan Bader. And more to the point, he has something more of an open style. He'll take risks in ways where Bader is a little bit more calculating, a little bit more careful. That could, of course, spell his demise. You can open you up to situations that you wouldn't ordinarily be open for, and that can be a bad thing. On the other hand, he's the one who's going to be pressing, let's say, the danger element here. And for that reason, you kind of have to like his chances as an underdog.
Look, if this fight goes late, you're certainly not going to favor Fedor Emelianenko. There's certain questions at the same time of his punch resistance at the elite level, but the opportunity and the threat of an early knockout for Fedor is certainly there. I talked to Ryan Bader this week. He understands his wrestling strength and why he would potentially want to use it in this matchup. But you do wonder what the close-up, the showcase nature of this fight means to both fighters. It'll take place inside the Forum in Inglewood, California, the same location it just happened to be of the first meeting between these two fighters in 2019. But when you talk about the final, the last ride of the last emperor, the final fight and the romanticism that comes with that for Fedor, you talk about this being on CBS, the first time mixed martial arts has appeared on there in 13 years, back to a time frame when, oh, by the way, it was Fedor Emelianenko that ushered this in under the Strikeforce banner with Scott Coker, who's now just happens to be the head of Bellator MMA. Coker has announced that he will have a plethora of legends cage side, from Randy Couture to Dan Henderson to many former Fedor opponents, and considers this in some ways the end of an era, and certainly one that Fedor was the face of for so many years. But the puncher's chance element is still there. Luke, when you look at the bright lights, the stage, the offerings, there is a little bit of history at times in professional sports of the great ones saving everything that's left for that last time out there. Kobe Bryant dropping 60 points in his final game. Ted Williams, a home run in his final at bat. Maybe even George St. Pierre in MMA circles coming back after a long layoff and winning a second title. Do you think a victory here for Fedor would move the needle at all in terms of his legacy with what you said? Probably the greatest heavyweight ever in that short conversation of the GOAT of the sport entirely.
It might. I think there's been listen, Fedor's been fighting for a long time. This guy was on top of the world when I was in college, right? I mean, a lot of time has elapsed since then. He's still out here fighting. Of course, not exactly at the level he once was in his very, very peak, but to the point we've already made, he is fighting for a weight class title in his final contest. Listen, in general, though, here's what I would caution folks. In general, MMA doesn't give very graceful exits to anyone except the very best. St. Pierre had a great exit. Khabib Nurmagomedov sort of engineered a really great exit as well. But those are the exceptions that tend to prove the rule. The question is where Fedor will come in from there. But I will say this. One thing Fedor has said this week is that, he's ready to be done. He's ready to move on. He said he doesn't handle pressure the same way, which I thought was kind of interesting. But he was also glad to be done with the rigmarole of doing press conferences and interviews and photography sessions and everything else. He seemed, in that sense, very much over it. I think he feels a little bit of relief. I think he feels a little bit of joy that this journey, while it has been so fruitful, is coming to a close. And I actually think because of that, you're going to get a better version of what you ordinarily would have been. It's not just another fight. This is it. And Fedor knows it's it. And I think you're going to get him in a mind state that's ready to do the best version of what he can.
Well, Fedor has already transitioned to a successful run as a trainer. He's got Vadim Nemkov, the light heavyweight champion, Valentin Moldavsky, the former interim heavyweight title holder. He's also got Tokov. Yes, I'm talking about Anatoly Tokov, 7-0 since joining Bellator in 2017. He's in the co-main event on Saturday night against defending middleweight champion and unbeaten Johnny Eblen. Luke Thomas, you can make the case that this might be the best fight on the card altogether. What are your expectations in this middleweight title clash?
Not in any way hyperbole to call this, but again, on paper, potentially the best fight on this card. We'll see how it goes in real terms. Eblen, very much your champion, but an unheralded one, although not a ton of experience. However, he comes out of the University of Missouri wrestling program, so he is a combat athlete for a very long time. Anatoly Tokov, a lot of folks don't know, he had a little bit of break in his career during the pandemic. and hasn't exactly been on the brighter lights until more recently. An absolutely well-muscled Russian, as BC indicated, out of Fedor's team, who is excellent at wrestling, very good with attacking from the back. He has great cardio. That's important because this is a 5-round contest. This is a very close one. The question is, can someone like Tokov disrupt the grappling, that Division I wrestling that Emelianenko has? To me, that's where this fight is going to be won or lost.
The two longest active win streaks under the Bellator banner will be in that co-main event. And quickly, Luke, to open the 3-fight main card, talk about the potential of fireworks. Sabah Homasi, Brennan Ward, 2 welterweights are going to leave it all inside the cage. But for Ward, this is a big moment in his personal journey, just as well as his professional.
Yeah, I mean, they put this fight to open the main card for a reason, folks. Fireworks. There's nothing else to expect except the 4th of July when that bell really rings. But of course, Brendan Ward, who I spoke to in the run-up to this fight, has told me a lot about his story where he was addicted to drugs. He had to go into rehab. He had to change every portion of his life. He lost years, basically 5 years in total of his career, where he was unable to perform or had to lose fights or whatever by virtue of being in the grips of this addiction. But it looks like he's beaten it for the first time ever at age 34. He has a full fight camp, and Sabah Homasi, out of a great camp himself, American Top Team out of Coconut Creek, Florida. These two guys both love to have exciting, striking-based matches. They're not afraid of contact. Buckle up, folks. That one's going to be fun.
9 p.m. Eastern Saturday night, Bellator 290 on CBS.
For more from Luke and Brian on The Morning Kombat, you can check out their YouTube channel. In the very latest episode, the guys are diving deeper into Bellator 290, also chatting about the return of MMA to CBS. You can also download and listen wherever you get your podcasts, and you can scan that QR code.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.